Have you ever felt so tired of learning English that even hearing someone speak it makes you want to disappear? I did. One freezing morning in Denmark, I almost gave up, until a small moment in a warm little bakery changed everything. This video isn't just about English. It's about how kindness, spoken in simple words, can rebuild your confidence, heal your fear of speaking, and teach your heart to listen again. The morning I wanted to quit. It was one of those mornings when even the sky looked exhausted. The wind in Copenhagen felt like it could slice through my thoughts. I remember standing at a street corner holding a half-cold coffee, watching people speak fluent English, so fast, so effortlessly, and all I could think was, maybe I'll never sound like them. You know that feeling, right? When your mouth knows the words, but your courage doesn't show up. When your brain feels full of grammar, but empty of confidence. That was me. I had practiced English for years. Apps, courses, YouTube videos. Yet when it was time to actually speak, my tongue turned into a block of ice. That morning I felt like deleting everything. My English notes, my listening playlists, even the dream of one day feeling fluent. I told myself, I'm done pretending. But here's the strange part. The more I tried to quit, the heavier it felt. Like quitting wasn't freedom. It was a quiet kind of sadness that I walked aimlessly through the city until I saw a small bakery glowing like a golden square of light against the gray sky. I stepped in mostly to escape the cold, not knowing that this little detour would change everything about how I learn and how I feel about English. Inside, everything smelled like home. Butter, sugar, warmth. But inside me there was only noise, that voice that says, you're not good enough. I wanted to disappear into the background, to be invisible again, to stop trying so hard. And then something very small happened. Something almost too ordinary to notice, but that's usually how turning points arrive, right? Quietly, softly, hidden inside a normal day. That's when I met her. The bakery girl. She didn't know she was about to teach me something no English textbook ever could. Something that had nothing to do with grammar or accent or vocabulary, but everything to do with human connection. You see, sometimes you don't need a perfect sentence. You just need one honest moment. That was the morning I almost gave up learning English. And the same morning I began to really understand it. Inside the bakery, the door chimed softly as I stepped inside. Warm air rushed to meet my frozen hands, carrying the smell of cinnamon and melted butter. It felt like stepping into another world. One that didn't care how good my English was, or how broken my confidence sounded. The shelves glowed with golden loaves, and behind the counter, trays of pastries looked like they were smiling at me. But I wasn't there for bread. I was there because I didn't know where else to go. For a moment I just stood still, listening. The sound of the oven opening. The quiet hum of Danish words I didn't understand. The little bell of the cash register. Everything was calm. Yet inside my head chaos whispered, don't speak. Don't embarrass yourself again. You know that inner voice, right? The one that mocks you every time you try to practice speaking? It says things like your accent sounds weird. Or people will laugh if you make a mistake. Psychologists call it the inner critic. And it's basically the worst language teacher you'll ever have. It doesn't teach. It paralyzes, so I hid behind silence. I looked at the cakes, nodded politely, and prayed the cashier wouldn't talk to me. Ironically, I was in the one place that smelled of comfort, yet I felt completely out of place. And then something shifted. A laugh, light, natural, came from behind the counter. I looked up and saw a young woman wiping flour from her cheek, smiling like the world wasn't so heavy after all. She looked at me, really looked, not like a stranger but like someone who saw my nervousness and didn't mind it. That moment lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it pierced through the fog inside me. There was no judgment in her eyes. No rush. Just quiet kindness. Later, I'd realize how powerful that was, how nonverbal kindness creates a bridge before words even appear. In language learning, that bridge matters more than pronunciation drills. Neuroscience actually proves it. When you feel safe, your brain releases oxytocin, the connection hormone. It lowers fear, boosts memory, and helps you absorb language faster. But I didn't know any of that back then. I only knew this. For the first time in weeks, I wanted to stay somewhere, not run away. That little bakery, hidden on a quiet Danish street, became the first classroom where I learned that English isn't just a subject. It's a way of reaching out and being reached back. The girl behind the counter. She looked up again, smiled, and said in soft, careful English, "Good morning. What would you like today?" Her voice wasn't perfect. It had a Danish rhythm, a slightly rounded R, and the melody of someone who'd also learned English as a second language. But somehow it sounded comforting, like she wasn't trying to impress, just to connect. For a split second I panicked. My brain froze, searching for the right way to answer. And then I remembered something ridiculous. I had practiced this exact situation 100 times with a language app. "I would like 1 coffee and a croissant, please." Yet when it was time to say it to a real human, every word felt stuck in traffic. I finally managed to whisper, "1 coffee and that one," pointing awkwardly to a pastry. She nodded, still smiling like she had seen this movie before. Her kindness didn't rush me, didn't make me feel stupid. Instead, it gave me space. And in that space, something small and beautiful happened. I stopped being afraid. When she handed me the coffee, she said, "It's cold outside, huh?" Her tone was light, friendly, and without realizing it, she had just given me a second chance to practice. That I answered, slowly, clumsily, but honestly, "Yes, very cold. But warm in here." She laughed softly, not at me but with me. That tiny exchange, maybe 7 words in total, did what months of study couldn't. It made English feel alive again. You see, there's real psychology behind that. When you associate learning with positive emotion, your brain literally rewires itself. The amygdala, the fear center of the brain, relaxes. The hippocampus, which stores memory, opens up. Meaning, you learn better when you feel safe and connected. That girl didn't teach me grammar. She taught my nervous system to trust again, and in that moment, I realized that maybe fluency isn't about how many words you know. Maybe it's about how many hearts you're brave enough to connect with. I sat by the window, sipping the coffee she made. I watched the snow fall outside and thought, maybe I don't need to sound perfect. Maybe I just need to sound human. That was the first time in my life that English stopped being a wall and started becoming a bridge. The fear of speaking. Let's be honest. Speaking English in real life feels like standing on a stage without a script. Your heart beats too fast. Your mouth forgets the words, and suddenly the simplest sentence, "How are you?" feels like climbing Mount Everest barefoot. That's exactly how I used to feel. Every time someone spoke to me in English, my brain split in two. One half tried to remember grammar rules. The other half screamed, "Don't say anything stupid." It's what psychologists call linguistic anxiety, the fear of being judged for how you sound, not what you mean. You see, your brain is designed to protect you from embarrassment the same way it protects you from fire. When you fear being judged, your body reacts as if you're in danger. The amygdala lights up. Your breathing shortens. Your working memory shuts down. That's why you suddenly forget words you've known for years. Your nervous system doesn't care about verbs. It just wants to survive. I remember one day in a Danish cafe, a man asked me where I was from. My brain completely blanked. Instead of answering, I panicked and laughed awkwardly. That fake laugh people use to hide their fear. He smiled politely and walked away, and I sat there humiliated by my silence. That night, I promised myself I'd never speak again unless I was perfect. Big mistake. Because silence doesn't protect you. It isolates you. And the more you hide from speaking, the scarier it becomes. It's like feeding a monster. Every time you run, it grows. That's why I now tell people, you don't overcome fear by waiting for confidence. You build confidence by speaking while you're still scared. Neuroscience agrees. Every small attempt to speak creates new neural connections. It's like lifting emotional weights. Your fluency muscle grows stronger every time you dare to open your mouth. So the next time you freeze, don't judge yourself. Just breathe. Remember that your accent isn't a flaw. It's your story written in sound. That morning in the bakery, I didn't know all this science yet, but I felt it. The warmth of a simple conversation thawed something frozen inside me. I realized the real goal wasn't to speak perfect English, it was to speak anyway. And that realization changed everything that came next. The science of tiny wins. Here's a secret your brain doesn't want you to know. It doesn't actually care about big progress. It craves tiny victories. That's why when you finally understand one English sentence from a movie, you feel an instant spark of joy. It's dopamine, your brain's way of saying, "Hey, you did it. Keep going." After that morning in the bakery, I started noticing how small moments could change my learning. Saying thank you out loud without overthinking. Ordering coffee in English even if my pronunciation was clumsy. Smiling when I got a word wrong. And moving on. Each one was a microscopic victory, but together they built a rhythm. You see, most people quit not because they're lazy, but because they can't see progress. When results feel invisible, the brain loses motivation. But neuroscience shows something powerful. When you break a big goal into smaller, visible wins, your dopamine system rewards you again and again. It's called the progress loop. I didn't know those fancy terms then. I just noticed that the more I celebrated little things, the less afraid I was to fail. Once I said, "I am here since 2 years. Totally wrong grammar." The bakery girl laughed softly and said, "You mean you have been here for 2 years?" I repeated it. She nodded. That correction, done gently, became a bright memory in my mind. My brain tagged it as safe. The next time I used that tense, it came naturally. That's how neural plasticity works. Safety plus repetition equals fluency. Tiny steps reprogram your brain faster than massive efforts followed by burnout. Think of it like baking bread. You can't rush it, but if you keep the dough warm, it rises on its own. So if you ever feel stuck, don't aim to speak English fluently. Just aim to say one honest sentence today to one real person. That's enough. Because every sentence you dare to speak builds a bridge inside your brain from fear to flow. For me, that bridge started with a croissant, a cup of coffee, and a smile. And before I knew it, English wasn't a subject anymore. It was a daily practice of tiny wins and quiet courage. That's how the healing began. Not through perfection, but through progress so small it almost looked invisible. Speaking like a human, not a robot. Let me tell you a secret. I used to sound like Google Translate with stage fright. Every time I spoke English, it was stiff, over-rehearsed, robotic. I was too focused on being correct and forgot how to be real. But that bakery girl, she changed that. She spoke with warmth, not perfection. Her words had rhythm, not grammar charts. And that made me realize something. People connect with emotions, not accuracy. When we speak like robots, it's usually because we're trying too hard to impress. We flatten our voice, kill our natural melody, and censor our personality. But language isn't just vocabulary. It's music. Every rise and fall in tone tells the listener, hey, I'm here, I care, I'm human. So I started practicing differently. I stopped memorizing full sentences. Instead, I really listened to how people expressed emotions, how they stretched words when surprised. Really, how they softened their tone when being kind. It's okay. How they paused when thinking, not out of hesitation but connection. Then I mimicked them. Not just the words but the feeling. I would watch English interviews with subtitles off, close my eyes, and repeat the melody I heard. It was awkward at first. But then something clicked. My pronunciation became alive. My voice started to sound like me. Science actually supports this. Linguists call it shadowing. Copying natural rhythm trains your ear, your mouth, and your brain at once. It's how babies learn their first language. And here's the fun part. When you shadow real emotion, your brain releases mirror neurons, the same ones that fire when you empathize. In other words, by speaking like a human, you literally train your brain to feel like one again. So now, whenever I talk in English, even if I mess up tenses, I focus on tone over tension. If I can make someone smile, laugh, or just feel seen, then I'm fluent enough for that moment. Because language isn't a performance. It's a heartbeat. And when your words carry warmth instead of worry, people don't remember your mistakes. They remember your humanity. That's what the bakery girl taught me without ever meaning to. She spoke from kindness, not confidence, and it made all the difference. The day I spoke without fear. It happened months later on another cold Danish morning. The sky was pale and heavy, the streets quiet. I was on my way to that same bakery as always, a small ritual that had become my comfort zone. But that day, something felt different. When I walked in, the girl smiled and said, "Hey, good morning." The usual. And before I could overthink it, I replied, naturally, fluently, with a little laugh in my voice. "Actually, I'll try something new today." It sounds small, doesn't it? Just one sentence. But for me, it was a breakthrough. For the first time, English didn't feel like a performance, it felt like a conversation. My brain wasn't busy translating. My mouth wasn't trembling. My heart wasn't hiding that we talked for a few minutes about weather, bread, and how the mornings were getting shorter. Simple words. But behind them was years of fear melting away. I could feel it. The silence that used to choke me was gone. After I left the bakery, I walked down the street holding my warm coffee and I smiled. Not because I spoke perfect English, I didn't, but because I had finally stopped being afraid of my own voice. That moment stayed with me. It wasn't about language anymore. It was about belonging. I realized I had spent so much of my life trying to sound right that I forgot what it meant to feel right in a conversation. And here's what I learned that day. Confidence doesn't come after fluency. Comes before. You have to speak bravely before you ever speak beautifully. Every accent tells a story. Every mistake is proof that you tried. Every shaky word is a bridge to connection, so if you're watching this and you're tired, embarrassed, or ready to give up, don't. One day, without realizing it, you'll open your mouth and words will flow, not perfectly but freely. And you'll understand. That's what fluency truly is. It's not in your tongue. It's in your heart finally saying, I belong here. What fluency really means. For a long time, I believed fluency meant speaking like a native, fast, flawless, full of idioms. But the more I lived, listened, and spoke, the more I realized fluency isn't perfection. It's connection. Real fluency is when you stop chasing words and start sharing meaning. It's when your language becomes a bridge, not a wall, between you and another human being. It's when you no longer speak to impress, but to express. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who spoke with mistakes, but every word they said touched your heart? That's fluency. Because communication is not a grammar exam. It's a human exchange. I remember once, an elderly Danish man sat beside me on a bus. He didn't speak much English and I didn't speak much Danish. But we both tried. We laughed, we used our hands, our faces, our tone. Somehow we understood each other perfectly. Not every word, but every feeling. That day, I understood something profound. Understanding begins long before perfect grammar does. And maybe that's what true learning is. Not about mastering a language, but about softening enough to be understood. So when people ask me now, are you fluent? I smile. Because yes, I am fluent. Not because I speak like an English teacher, but because I can tell my story, share a laugh, and connect hearts across accents. Fluency isn't in your vocabulary. It's in your vulnerability. It's the courage to speak before you're ready, and to keep speaking even after you've failed at it. So if you're still learning, please remember, every time you open your mouth in English, you're not just practicing a skill, you're practicing bravery. And one day that bravery will turn into ease, and you'll realize you've been fluent, not since you stopped making mistakes, but since the moment you stopped hiding from them. That's the quiet truth most language teachers never tell you. Fluency isn't the sound of perfection, it's the sound of a human being daring to connect. Closing message. So that's how one small moment in a bakery changed the way I learn and live with English. Not through rules, not through perfection, but through connection. If you're struggling right now, whisper this to yourself. It's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to be slow. It's okay to sound human. Because every mistake you make carries the sound of courage, the sound of someone who refused to give up. You don't need to study harder. You just need to listen deeper to people, to stories, and to your own voice. The more you listen, the more your heart starts speaking before your mouth even catches up. And maybe one day, when someone in a small cafe, a bus, or a classroom smiles because of your words, even broken ones, you'll realize you've already made it. English isn't a finish line. It's a bridge. And every word you say is a step across it, so keep walking. Keep speaking. Keep being brave. And remember, fluency doesn't happen in your mouth, it happens in your heart.